Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, Welcome to our Milk Tea Corner, second edition. And as you know, the Milk Tea Corner is a periodical event that we have to have a conversation on sustainability. It's a parallel of our regular Tea Corner because this Milk Tea Corner is dedicated to the Asia continent. And we are very happy to have today Allinnettes Adigue. She's the director of ASEAN Regional Network of Global Reporting Initiative. And Allinette, the floor is yours. We want to investigate together if the Western Sustainability Reporting practice fit with the Asia condition situation. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and good afternoon, good morning to all of us who were able to join us today. I am Allinnettes. I am the director of the Global Reporting Initiative, and I am based here in Singapore. So it is afternoon here now. Well, Daniel, are we providing milk tea for anyone?
I have the regular tea because I don't drink, but to
Yeah,
try to.
I have my water here. Anyway, uh, I prepared a short presentation for everyone, which could be a trigger point for discussion. I know that we only have like half an hour. I will try not to talk for endlessly, so there's an opportunity for us to have a meaningful discussion. So this was the topic that I was asked to speak about. So do Western sustainability reporting models work in ASEAN? So for those who are not aware, ASEAN comprises of Southeast Asia, comprises of 11 countries. Used to be 10. Most recently, Timor-Leste was admitted into ASEAN. So now we're now 11. And in terms of the profile of the country, in terms of economic development, language, race, it's one of the most diverse region in the world. And when we talk about sustainability reporting requirements, of course, there's also different requirements across the region. So of the 11 countries, there are only 6 countries currently that require some form of sustainability reporting. So that would be Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So of the 6 countries, the earliest one is in Thailand. It was issued by Thailand, which was more than 10 years ago, and the rest of the other 5 started requiring sustainability reporting around 2016 onwards. And I can say that majority of the listed companies in ASEAN are using the Global Reporting Initiative in their sustainability reporting. So right now there are around 4,000 plus listed companies in Southeast Asia. And I can also say that majority of reporters in sustainability, those who are doing sustainability report are listed companies. Why? Because the requirement for sustainability reports for companies to issue sustainability reports usually come from the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the stock exchanges. That's why right now they're the only ones that are required to report. So as I said, majority are using GRI, but there are a lot of sustainability frameworks and standards out there. So to answer the question, it took me a long time to go back to the question. So the question is, do Western sustainability reporting models work in ASEAN? But my answer is this is the wrong question to be asking. So this is not an issue about West versus East or West versus Asia. It's about context versus copy paste. So in ASEAN, the challenge isn't rejection of global standards. It's about capacity sequencing and relevance. So GRI is one of those global standards. We create it in such a way that it captures the best practices in sustainability reporting in the world across the topics of economic, environment, social, and governance. But based on the principle of materiality, we advise companies to report only on topics that they have the most impact on, whether it's in the economy, environment, society. Next slide. Okay, so what makes ASEAN different and why it matters to reporting? So to understand sustainability reporting challenges in ASEAN, we need to recognize these fundamental realities. So for one, so I mentioned there are around only 4,500 listed companies. But when we talk about SMEs across the region, we have at least 70 million SMEs, right? So I'm just talking about SMEs that are registered, legally registered, because there are SMEs that that don't register at all. So small and medium enterprises form the backbone of ASEAN supply chains. So businesses rarely have dedicated sustainability teams or reporting infrastructure. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, only large listed companies right now are doing sustainability reports. So across the region, there's no mandatory requirement yet for sustainability reporting. And because of their size and resource constraints, if sustainability reporting becomes mandatory in its current form, like how they are required for large companies, I can say that probably majority of them will not be able to meet the requirements. And then, so moving to the next one is like uneven regulatory maturity. So regulatory frameworks vary across the region. So in ASEAN, Singapore and Malaysia has moved ahead with ISSB. The Philippines very recently has moved ahead with ISSB as well around December, while others are still developing their voluntary guidelines. And this is just one among the many reporting requirements that companies have to comply with. And then, of course, most important thing is resource constraints. So as I mentioned, you have majority of our companies in ASEAN are SMEs. So they don't have the luxury and resources that large companies have, that they can that they can create a dedicated sustainability team, let alone a dedicated sustainability reporting team, and send them to various trainings or even hire consultants to help them write reports. Because for SMEs here in the region, and if you look at the definition of SMEs in Europe and compared to the Philippines, your definition of SMEs, usually a lot of them are already large companies in ASEAN. So SMEs here, for the most part, they're concerned with day-to-day survival. So if I am an SME, why would I spend, why would I send one employee to a 3-day training on sustainability reporting when they can be working in the shop floor? Next. So what actually, this is just my proposition, what would actually work? So it's adaptation, not reinvention. So the solution isn't creating new ASEAN specific frameworks, but it's about smarter implementation of existing global standards. So as I said, that's how GRI was created. It's not like plug and play. That's why it's founded on a number of principles, and the core of which is materiality. You only report on things that you have an impact on, the things that you have that are material to you. And then, of course, the new mandatory reporting, which is climate reporting, which focuses on financial materiality. So this one has a steeper learning curve for companies, but if a company is already reporting on GRI, on impact materiality, it provides a good foundation on how to report on financial materiality. And I think the most important thing, and this is what I always tell regulators as well, you cannot just come up with a regulation without providing support to companies on how to comply with them, or even helping them understand on how to comply with them. Because if you issue a policy or regulation that is so hard to understand or so hard to implement, or it would cost the company a lot of money just to comply, I would say that it is an ineffective regulation. So the question, a critical question, is if sustainability reporting becomes mandatory across ASEAN, who are we designing it for, and who are we leaving behind? So is it just a matter of compliance, just to say like, therefore we follow the rest of the world because everyone is moving towards sustainability reporting? But at the end of the day, is it really creating meaningful results at the end of the day? So I'll stop there. If you have any questions, I hope you do.
Danielle, you're muted.
Thank you, Alinette. We can stop the presentation so we have the opportunity to see each other better in face to face. And thank you, Alinette. Very interesting. And I already some question, but before I like to heard if there is any participant that has some comment, question, or consideration of what Alinette already presented to us. Not yet, but you can raise your hand, open your microphone if you like to be part of the conversation. No, I was thinking that you start with the clarification there is no point of West versus Asia, or sometimes we say North versus South, there's different way to describe the geography of the world. But during your presentation, I also thought that the one of the key point is the scale, the dimension of the company, because obviously it's a different scale, but I understand I understood your explanation with a lot of similarity, even in our market, where we have big company with a lot of capacity in terms of resources, people, competence, and the small medium enterprise. The small medium as defined by European Commission, but even the micro company that's more similar, maybe your definition of small medium enterprise, that has a lot more difficulty to follow, even if they want to be committed, but it's practically difficult to be engaged in this process. So, can you, what do you think? This kind of comparison, not in terms of geography, but more in terms of dimension, even in the west part of the world?
Because it's always the why. We start with the why, right? Why do you want them to report? Is it you just want to gather the numbers, right? You want to populate these numbers, and if you do, what are you going to use these numbers for? So, are you going to use these numbers to inform policy making? Which is, of course, that is the way to be, right? So, if you want to ask companies to start reporting on their GHG emission as a government agency, why do I need those information? So that I can know where the emissions are, and that I can, as a government, I can create appropriate policies, probably incentive support for companies. So it's always the why. Why do we want this? Because when GRI was created, the mission for us was very clear. At the time, companies are only required to do financial reporting, which does not give the stakeholders the visibility of how they are impacting the economy, environment, and society. So they may, you might have a very good profit margin, but at the back end, you are hiring children, slave labor, child labor, or you're denuding, hectares and hectares of forest lands, right? So it's the same thing. Reporting should be a tool for something for sustainability, but what's happening now is that because everything, well, I wouldn't say it's moving fast. I think the planet is late because GRI started promoting sustainability reporting in 1997, right? And it only, the world is only catching up now, and because the world is playing catch up, they want everything to move fast. So companies are getting pressured to just publish reports without, so it is becoming a box ticking exercise. Now, comparing Europe to, the global north and the global south. So as I said, GRI and any other standard should just be a guide, right? They should apply it based on where they are at the moment, because we are all at different levels of development. I'll give you a concrete example. I work with this large company in the Philippines. So they work with European and North American investors. So at your part of the world, there's already discussion on, I forgot the term, but in terms of carbon, net zero. I'm looking for that word. So there is pressure from investors for companies to start doing net zero reporting as well. So commit to net zero and report on it. But when I spoke to that company, she said, well, they have the luxury of talking about net zero, but here in this part of the world, our biggest challenges when it comes to climate is climate resiliency, adaptation. We'd rather invest on how to ensure that our operations are resilient in flood prone locations, making sure that our community are protected, rather than spending a lot of money to come up with a net zero plan. So I think that's a very concrete example of the disparity. So I understand that, investors also have to make sure that, because before it's just financial impact, like, the currency risk, financial risk. But it's good that investors are now seeing that climate also poses a risk on the financial bottom line of a company. But the expectations should be realistic, and it should be rooted on the realities on the ground. Did I answer your question? That was a very long
Absolutely, yes. You also give me a lot of other inputs, so I had three, four questions for you now. And one important point we can take a note, because I believe that what you mentioned about net zero versus adaptation versus in brackets, I think is a very important topic, in particular in the South, global South, as you mentioned. No? In this moment, we know there in Mozambique, there are a huge flooding these days. Hundreds of people died, so it's difficult to start to have a conversation at zero in these conditions. So this could be maybe another suggestion for the further T-Corner to have a specific conversation on this point. But I want to go back to your consideration. Now, you underline why a company decided or have to do a sustainability report, because could be internal reason or external reason. So probably in this moment, I believe, but I like to have your confirmation, in the ASEAN country is more the external pressure that is leading, the idea to have the reporting. And this implies that there are two different forces. There is the voluntary framework and the mandatory regulatory framework. But going back to the point, what becomes very crucial and fundamental is the materiality analysis. Because with the materiality analysis, you are really able to scale up, to go in the granularity and to focus on which are the real important problems that deserve to be treated, and where do you have a peanuts, they are not really relevant for the company. What do you think?
Yeah, I like talking in concrete examples. I give you another example again. Why materiality in analysis assessment matters. So I've spoken to this bank. I'm not going to name the bank. So the bank is offering sustainability linked loans to SMEs. And so, of course, for SMEs to qualify, they should have some sort of proof. And that usually is a report. So I asked them, what are you asking them to report on? So they're more focused on the E, right? They want them to start reporting on their scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. But I told them, if a company is, let's say, a manpower agency, because in Singapore, it's a very small country, very few people. So for the most part, a lot of professionals and workers, blue and white collar workers are imported. So if the SME is a manpower agency asking you for a loan, do you think asking them to keep track of their GHG emission is really material? As a manpower agency, their impact is more on the S. So why are you not looking at that? Because, Singapore also has labor laws. So you want to ensure that this manpower agency is not trafficking people. It's hard to do that though in Singapore, but it does happen. So my point is, it's not just for the sake of saying that you're complying because everyone's reporting on the emissions, but it's really where the impact is. Where the impact of the company is, and in terms of, as you also mentioned, where the pressure is coming from. You're right; it's really coming pressure, external pressure, because someone is asking the report from them. This was I've proven this with some of the early reporters in the Philippines, because sustainable reporting started in 2019. But before that, there were only like 20 companies in the Philippines who are reporting. And some of the big ones who were the early starters, I asked them, like, why did you start reporting? Well, because I had an investor who wants us to publish a report in 1 month. So they said, well, we just copied our sister company's report, and make sure that they tried as much as they can to come up with an accurate report. But they said, so for that one, but the first time, yes, it was out of pressure and compliance, but throughout the years, they've been reporting, I think, for more than 15 years now. But they said throughout the years, they've stuck with it because they see the value of doing a sustainability report. So it's not really just the report is the proof that you are a sustainable company, because there's nothing to report if you don't have actual ESG programs in place.
Yeah, the connection between the word and the action, no? And it's also in connection with the level of maturity of the company in the country. So, no, sometime in the West countries there is a vision that Asia like a single homogeneous reality, but in reality we have 3 billion people living in situation, condition, country completely different, And I would like to take advantage of your experience, your particular focus in the Asian country, to better understand exactly what you just pointed out before, the differences between the social and the environmental importance in different countries, because probably Bangladesh and Singapore to the reality completely different, no? Can you give us some more information in this direction?
Well, in terms of environment, we know that Southeast Asia is the home to the world's cities that are most vulnerable to climate change. Bangkok is sinking, Jakarta is sinking, Manila is below sea level, right? I mean, in Jakarta, in Indonesia, they're already moving the capital outside Jakarta because the city is sinking. So environmental issues are really, it's an environmental hotspot. Other than that, it's also in terms of biodiversity. It is home to it's one of the most biodiverse regions in the world, but it's also being killed at a very fast rate because of economic development. Because ASEAN is the world's factory, right? We are the biggest exporter of agricultural raw products, and other raw mining resources. So it's being the degradation is happening at a very fast pace. So that's the environmental part. And when you look at the social part, um, uh, with the exception, Singapore, of course, is now considered an advanced economy. Malaysia and Thailand is, upper middle income, but the rest are still considered as developing. Well, the Philippines we're aiming to become an upper middle income. So there's still a lot of social issues happening, right? Majority of the population is poor, and for example, agriculture, right? We are the one of the, I think, second or third highest exporter as a region, highest exporter of agricultural products. But if you look at the farmers, 80% are smallholders, meaning they own land less than 1 hectare, which they cannot invest. So the agricultural yield is very low. So the region is scrambling with a lot of these environmental and social issues, and then you come asking with so many regulatory requirements. I mean, I am a policy wonk. I am a student of public policy, and I believe in regulation, because if we let companies and human beings just do their own thing, the world will be in chaos, right? So we need regulations, we need laws. But as I always say, it shouldn't regulatees should not be asked to jump like so many hoops just to be able to comply, right? What is the purpose of the regulation? Is it like a bar exam or a board exam? You just want to test out who is the smartest, or you want to influence regulators to adopt certain good behavior?
Yes, thank you. And a lot of other interesting input. You mentioned those farmers, more farmers. I had the pleasure, the opportunity to interview for an article a representative of farmers in Philippines during the COP30, describing that sometime, the hurricane, the typhoon can destroy, the rice field, And that it's not only to lose the possibility to have the harvest, but there's also to lose the opportunity to have the second harvest in the year. So it's very, very dramatical condition for the economical perspective. But you also mentioned you pronunciate the word regulators or regulation. And it's very easy for us to jump, over the ocean to understand what is happening in the US at this moment, where there is the will to destroy the international agreement, the regulation, the international cooperation. And this could also open the perspective of a different role of Asia in some way, in my view. Because in the past, the Asia was pointed out like part of the polluters of the world, even if it was there is a lot more complexity behind the situation. But now there is an opportunity in some way to be on the part of who is want to lead to promote the change at the political level in terms of cooperation and multilateralism. What do you think?
Hey, again, I like giving concrete examples. Like, the EU, they're quite good in coming up with all these regulations that covers, all the alphabets, from A to Z. You have the CBAM, CSRD, you have the R,
CSRD.
CSFR. Yeah. So there's so many of them. I just read an article the other day about the sustainable finance regulation in Europe, the EU CSF. Yeah, anyway, I get mixed up with all the alphabet. So they released a study just last week, and you know what they found? It has not increased sustainable finance products and uptake of sustainable finance. Why? Because people don't understand it, right? So again, that's the value of, like, are you issuing regulations for the sake of, or are you issuing regulations to really so that people will comply, right? Same with CBAM, right? So I mean, in economics we learn polluter pays principle. So that is the idea of CBAM. I have a friend in Australia. He's like one of the foremost climate policy thinkers in Australia, and I asked him about that. And the thing is, so I told him, okay, you are imposing this tax for companies who will export products in the EU, but it's the EU asking for those products, right? The more they order, the higher the environmental damage, right? So why are you then start? I mean, I told him it might be a very simplistic perspective, but it's the law of supply and demand, right? So what he told me was that then the rest of the world should not just be policy takers, right? Because what's happening now is one part of the world is imposing regulation, and of course, if I am an economy that depends so much on exports, right? Then I have no choice but to comply. So it has become like more of a it's becoming it is an even economic development. So well, but that is the reality. Most developing countries are policy takers. For that part, I don't have the answer.
Yes, and also I don't know if there is any final question from some participants, because I didn't see any hand raised or microphone open. So okay, Rina, you go.
Hey,
Go ahead.
hello. I have so many questions to ask, but since I'm not a
Only one.
policymaker, yes. But how has there been a push to implement policy? Because I do agree with what you said about the importance of policy, but understanding the context, not just in Asia, but in other parts of the world where European regulations may not apply.
Well, I just what an example. I mean, more of like the pushback, right? Like, see what happened to CSRD, right? In its original form, it was so ambitious, and then it has went through so many discussions. I was telling my friend based in Brussels, like I don't know what CSRD looks like right now, because they said, oh, it's too stringent, it's too strict, no one can comply with it. And then so there was a revision, and then it was revised. People then said, oh, this is a step back, European Union doesn't care about the planet because it's you know, it's how do you call it, softening on the requirements, right? So so that's my point about uneven, you know, uneven implementation of regulation, and that is at the European level. So imagine if you are if you have EU regulations and you're asking SMEs in the Philippines or in Vietnam to comply with it. Again, I'm going back. You know, I'll go back. I'm not saying that regulations are wrong, but it should be well thought of. And I'm not saying that they didn't think about it, but maybe I am saying that.
Okay, Allinette, the time is gone, and the tea is finished, so we are in conclusion of our very interesting conversation. I'm really like to thank you for your participation. It was very interesting and stimulating. And the next Milk Tea Corner will be the 27th of March with the Rai Kwon Chung. We will move to Korea in this case. And the title is The Missing COP Debate. What is the role of consumption metrics? And this is also very relevant, you know, for the Asian perspective, to move from the production accounting to the consumption accounting. So very interesting topic. I hope to meet all of you again in March. And thanks again. Good afternoon or good morning, depends on where you are in this moment. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.